uppercut, try to hit me in the gut, thinking that I won't react. You whispering my name, thinking I won't be the same. Turn fiction into fact. See what you didn't know, bruises that'll never show, slipping on your every jab. So tighten up your fist, step into the ring with this. I hope your mama's got your back. First round, you thought you would've knocked me down. Fifth round, bleeding out the side of your mouth. Final round, holding the sound of my name in the crowd. You hit a bus. Oh, 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 oh. You hit a bus. Oh, 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 oh. Just 'cause I took a break, you're making a huge mistake, thinking you can take the throne. Look at you trembling, step into the lion's den. Bet you wish you stayed at home. Begging for mercy underneath your breath when I ain't even sweating yet. My legend's written in the stone, yeah. You're crying danger in defeat is now your only friend. Even your mama's gotta know. First round, you thought you would've knocked me down. Fifth round, bleeding out the side of your mouth. Final round, holding the sound of my name in the crowd. You hit a bus. Oh, 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 oh. You hit a bus. Oh, 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 First round, fifth round, final round. Oh, 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 yeah. First round, fifth round, final round. No, 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 no. First round, you thought you would've knocked me down. Fifth round, bleeding out the side of your mouth. Final round, holding the sound of my name in the crowd. You hit a bus. Oh, 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 oh. You hit a bus. Oh, oh, oh,
Hello, everyone. Welcome to In Time. My name is Nicholas Lamar Suter. Thank you for joining us. With us today, Operator Starsky. It's so good that you could make it. I know things have been a little busy. I understand. We saw Zelensky talking about what's going on. And he's just like, well, we don't know if there's an offensive. We don't know. It's ready to go, but when is it going to start? Is it going to, you don't know these things. And we're like, yeah, there's explosions all over the map, but okay. So, thank you for joining us. We've also got with us Commander Lance McMillan. We are doing a deep dive in the U.S., some pretty big news. Obviously, President President Trump has been indicted on, we're learning now, 37 counts of 7 different charges, some of them extraordinarily serious. We were going over that on our Discord. Join us on our Discord if you want to learn more about that. We love covering Ukraine. I think it's important. We try to cover anything that's important either in the U.S. or nationally. Ukraine is obviously a big one, but we've got that going on too, and I have a sneaking suspicion we're going to be streaming on that very, very soon. But we have a lot of people on our Discord going over all the material. There's a tremendous amount of it, so we got a channel set up just for that. And as they go through it, the pictures of the toilet and all the classified material and boxes just stacked up around Trump's toilet is just like, oh my God. So, having said that,
if you're constipated from eating only fast food and you're on the toilet for long periods of time, you've got to have reading material.
You got to have, and you got to declassify it. I mean, he's probably the only president who's ever declassified material while on the job. Actually, that's probably not true, but having said that, yeah, that's it's insane. We've got all that on our Discord. Hope you will join us. But we all know that is not why you are here. Operator Starsky, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much. I missed you guys since last Friday, and today's news mostly related to nature. But before we start, I would like to mention that in the past 24 hours, the Russians lost 1,010 men, according to the General Staff of Ukraine. We're talking about the good Russians, because nobody care about living ones. I love I love the level of Russophobia we have here. I enjoy it as a Ukrainian. And two biggest updates that we have are related to, unfortunately, nature, because we have a natural disaster in Ukraine due to the Kakhovka dam destruction. So we received information from the US that states that apparently there was an explosion that was spotted by the satellites. The US satellite spotted a thermal trace at the spot of this explosion, and they said that apparently the explosion came from within the dam, which basically is logic, because we were shelling the Antonivsky Bridge for months. And it's still there. So you cannot destroy the dam with just a single missile. It's freaking impossible. And unfortunately, the scale of this disaster is horrific, because we know that thousands and thousands of people were evacuated. We know that approximately 80 settlements, towns, villages were flooded very, very bad. And after the flood goes away, in several days approximately, there still will be a lot of problems, because all the electric equipment, all the wires, everything, it was flooded, and it will be
huge.
Have no electricity, no water, nothing at all, and fixing everything will take a lot of time. We're talking about months, maybe more. Also, from the ecological standpoint, a lot of fish died, a lot of animals died. The zoo in Kakhovka, in Nova Kakhovka, was flooded as well. We know that a lot of animals died there. Basically, all animals except for ducks and swans because they can swim. And of course, Russia realized that they screwed up big time because they didn't expect this to happen. They didn't expect a lot of other things. And that's why they already used all kinds of their influencers around the world to attempt to persuade that Ukraine did this because, of course, Ukrainians have this suicidal tendency to bomb our own hospitals and schools and kindergartens and malls and, of course, the dams. And the international response was very, very strong. But the strongest response came from the UN that decided to celebrate the Russian Language Day that very day. And they still didn't. They made a statement, but in this statement, they, as usual, they didn't include any names or titles or nothing like that. Countries, they only said that you cannot destroy dams because they're not target. And of course, Russians listened to them, and they, of course, will never target civilian targets anymore. The Red Cross is even more hilarious because, first of all, Ukrainian Red Cross decided to separate from the International Red Cross. Currently, we have Ukrainian Red Cross volunteers and medics working in the area. As for the International Red Cross, they have a different task now because, according to the most recent statement made by the International Red Cross, the citizens of 𝐒𝐸𝐵, that were turned into refugees, that basically lost their homes or whatever, in Russian town of 𝐒𝐸𝐵, they will receive compensation due to the International Red Cross. But as for the Kakhovka Dam, it didn't happen. We don't know what you're talking about. And another update, again, it's related to nature. We know that one specific shark was in danger. So the shark that ate a Russian citizen near Hurghada, I think that we saw a murder, because you cannot murder sharks for that. Unfortunately, this poor fish was caught by the local fishermen. They already received remains of the Russian citizen, and unfortunately they had to kill the shark. The shark that actually could do a lot of good things, because, you know, when the sharks start eating some specific type of food, they can switch to this food. So I would like to express my condolences to the relatives of the shark. We will remember her, and she's forever in our hearts. Funny thing was that the day when it happened, I checked the Russian media, and there were two more messages. One message dedicated to Russian citizens that were raped by a kangaroo, and they nearly died. And there was another, I swear, and there was another message, another report on a Russian tourist who got attacked by a parrot, and he lost his eyes and died. Not the parrot, the Russian. So what can we conclude from this? We can absolutely conclude that the God and nature hate Russians. I think it was absolutely proved during this month.
Well, let me quickly, and I should have had all of this pre-staged. I did not, but I do want to put this up here. So this is a picture of just 4 hours after the dam broke. As you can see, the water is up to the roofs on many of these houses. We have some satellite imagery as well on the Discord if you want to go see that there. This is a much closer shot. You can see, I mean, obviously there's no way to survive if you're in some of those homes. It's up to the roof. And we've heard stories of families who've tried to hide in the attic because that was the highest place. But of course, there's usually no way out of the attic if the water level rises to that. So this is obviously extraordinarily serious. This is one of the satellite images from before the dam breaking. And then what we have here is the same area after. And you can see it's a completely different image again. So before and after, and everything is just completely flooded and or washed away. So now there's been reports that the Russians have also been detonating or destroying anything that's got water in it, cisterns, any kind of water storage facilities in the area, presumably to make this worse. I don't know how you can make it much worse than it is. What, in your opinion, Starsky, is the goal of this? Is there, other than revenge, what is it that they're trying to accomplish with this?
Actually, there's more to this because today I received footage of people that were being evacuated in the area of Kherson, and Russians started shelling them. Basically, when this destruction of the dam happened, Russians already scrambled their Su-35 Su-34 airplanes, and they were heading towards Kherson and Mykolaiv, towards that area. So we can see basically the total desperation, total hatred among Russians. They are, again, they're losing Bakhmut. Bakhmut is getting surrounded, basically. And there are places in Bakhmut where our guys returned to their positions that they had under control almost 6 months ago. So Russians are desperate, and we can see that they're trying to do what they do best, basically fighting against unprotected civilians, as usual. That's something that makes them Russian. That's exactly the thing that makes them Russian.
Well, my understanding is, so they've first of all, anything that's Russian occupied, where the Russians are in control, they have been refusing to allow evacuations, even as the water level has been rising and people have been dying. And then in the Ukrainian areas where Ukraine is still in control, they've been basically waiting for refugees that they created to go into shelters or areas that are high ground and presumably safe from the flooding, and then begun shelling them. And we've also got that on some pretty powerful footage of people, all gathering, and then all of a sudden you can hear the shells landing, and it's like everybody's scrambling to find cover, and it's like they just lost their homes, lost their pets, lost family, and it's hard to find words to describe just how atrocious, and it looks, as you would say, pre-planned. I mean, they set everything up to like, oh, here's where they're going to go, hide from the water. Let's go. It's it's hard to describe. So, what else is going on? We've gotten word the U.S. has declared that the counteroffensive has begun. Ukraine has been cagey about it for obvious reasons. What can you tell us about combat in the area? Have there been any places that have been liberated, anywhere where there seems to be pushing on the lines that you can talk about?
Not much, except for the information that we already have from the official sources. We know that in Zaporizhia there was some heavy combat continuing for several days, I would say. And our operations in Bakhmut, because currently we have my guys there operating as well, and they say that these days were hard because Russians were shelling them more intensively than usual. But again, from the reports published by our general staff, we can see that Russian losses are rising, which is good. Plus one Russian killed by shark also.
Every little bit helps.
Yeah, absolutely. And I would only like to quote our president, who said that when the counteroffensive starts, you will see.
Yeah. So, yes. I was about to ask for your input, so please.
Yeah, I was going to say there are numerous Western news sources and not Western news sources as well that are saying the offensive has definitely begun. They're all talking about the fact that this is still just the opening phases. I think Al Jazeera and New York Times both reported that there's an advance going south from Zaporizhia, and it has penetrated the forward defensive line. But it needs to penetrate who knows how many more before they achieve an actual breakthrough. So we know that's going on. As Starsky alluded to, there's also fighting going around Bakhmut, and it appears that there may be potential for an encirclement of Russian forces that are in the Bakhmut area as well. So, yeah, there's definitely something underway, but the breakthrough that everybody's hoping for, that everybody's expecting, will be these, big, bold, dramatic blue arrows on the map. That hasn't actually begun yet, but we're in the opening phases, so we don't expect to see those for maybe, who knows, another 3 to 5 days if things are going well.
I think soon we will see another big blue line in the area of Belgorod, maybe. Because the new 𝐒𝐸𝐿𝐵 village is being controlled by the Russian freedom fighters already for 8 days.
Yeah,
and,
that's mind-boggling to me that the Russian security forces have not been able to respond and eject them. And I don't even think that, Free Russia Legion or whatever they're calling themselves, I don't think they expected to be there for probably more than 24 hours. And as you say, here we are 8 days in and they're still there. I'm sure there are people looking at each other going, something wrong? Should we pull back or should we advance?
They're literally the dog. They're literally the dog that caught the car, and they're like, crap, I caught this thing, now what? So I'm sorry, Starsky, you were going to say?
Yeah, it was exactly like that. And Russian officials like Peskov, for example, or Putin, they're like, who even gives a damn about new 𝐒𝐸𝐿𝐵, Belgorod? Like, who cares?
We didn't need that. Yeah, we didn't. I think everybody.
Right now, it's just symbolic right now, but it's close enough to a significant city that something could happen, and if that happens, you have to really, if you're a Russian, in the power structure, you definitely have to be concerned about a domino effect, because once that ball starts rolling, it's always very hard to stop it.
Yeah, and also we know about angry Polish guys. Finally received an opportunity to visit Russia in person. I saw those guys. They are crazy. They are.
So we've heard before that most likely. Well, actually, before we get to that, let me ask Starsky. I have to believe that there's a lot of talk in Ukraine about getting Crimea back. Crimea was illegally annexed in 2014. Russia has basically said it's ours now. It's a fait accompli, but nobody's doing anything about it. It's certainly, there was no help from the international community in recovering it, and the general consensus from everyone I've spoken to is that it is actually within the power of Ukraine now to get it back, which would be an absolute stunning blow, in my view, to Putin and his prestige to have lost it militarily. I have to believe that the people in Russia, in Ukraine, consider this a very high priority. Is there a lot of talk about it? Is there impatience for recovering it? What are people saying that they would like to see as the goals and that they're hoping for over the next few months?
We only see Crimea as one of the stages, one of the steps, because our main goal is to completely secure whole territory of Ukraine and restore the borders of 1991. Crimea is one of such stages. We know that we cannot have peace until there are Russian troops, and we have to remove them. So it's like we anticipate this to start as soon as possible in general, like the global counteroffensive in general. Not specifically Crimea. However, several days ago, I talked to one of my guys in my brigade. He's one of the commanders, and he comes from Crimea. And he says, "I want to go home so much because, there are places where he grew up and places where he served before 2014." And he says, there are so many places I want to visit, and so many people I would like to say hello from the Ukrainian National Guard.
Yeah.
Commander, I remember when this war had started, and there was the fight to create a land bridge between Crimea and the Donbass region, and I've forgotten the name of the refinery. I think it was at Mariupol, where there was the sort of the last stand in trying to keep this land bridge from being. I'm sorry, what?
Yeah, Azov
right,
or something like that.
So the general consensus is that any counteroffensive from the Ukrainians will probably try to sever that. You've discussed that before, but I was hoping you could refresh our audience on why would severing that be so important, and what, in your view, without giving too much, this has been discussed by many people, but in your view would be the approach?
Specifically about this, we talked about this months ago.
Yes.
I don't remember, but I know that probably as far back as like September, October, I was saying that was a very, very attractive route for the Ukrainian offensive, because it accomplishes 2.5 things. The big two is, number one, it does cut that land route to Crimea off completely. It means everything that they want to bring in, they have to bring in either by sea or over the Kerch Strait Bridge. Number two, once they secure that shore, on the Azov shore, it puts the bridge within easy targeting range of their own weapon systems. They don't even need, super high-tech Western stuff. This is stuff that the Ukrainian army would have had resident within their equipment before the war, that they could take the bridge out with that. So those two things, you end up in the half part is that leaves Crimea itself completely cut off and isolated. The only way to supply it is by sea, and that's very vulnerable to, as the Ukrainians have shown repeatedly, Russian naval ships trying to transit the area, or, deadly effects of missiles and drone boats, etc., that take them out. So that's a problematic approach. So the thing that surprises me is, by detonating the dam as they did, they're cutting off their water supply to Crimea, which further complicates their forces that are trying to hold Crimea. It's one thing to struggle without food. It's a completely different matter when you're out of water. So I understand why they did it. I'm not saying I agree with it, but it does pose a huge problem for the Ukrainian forces, because if they were anticipating doing any kind of attack across the Dnipro, it's now virtually impossible, because that's this devastated flooded zone, and you can't get across it anymore. So it simplifies their being the Russian defenses situation. They can hold that area with second-rate troops, because it's difficult for the Ukrainians to bring their own forces to bear across that flooded area. But at the same time, I think it actually is a strategic blunder on their part, because it leaves them very vulnerable to what happens once that land bridge does get cut.
Well, and so now,
at the same time, I'd like to add to that. At the same time, Russian troops can still receive their bottled water across the sea by ships. As for the locals, like, nobody cares about them, at all. So, so destroying the dam was, let's say, cutting the water supply was not really important for Russians, because, like, they're locals. Russians receive their water supply via their logistics. Again, it will be a rather small problem for Ukrainian troops that will be advancing towards Crimea, because our logistics are a bit better than Russian, and our guys will have just a tiny bit.
Just a smidge.
As for Russians, yes, they will be receiving. Of course, they will have problems with supplying water, but their troops will be supplied with water. As for the locals, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
well, and that's sort of, I mean, so we already know, as we had said before, in the Russian occupied territories, of which last I recall there was 25,000 people in the flooded area that was also on the Russian occupied side, and the Russians were like, no, we're not really going to evacuate or do anything to help. Now Crimea has, we believe, about 30 days of water.
They're actively blocking people from evacuating from the
Are
Russian flooded zone. Yes.
Oh God, why did that come as a surprise? So
It shouldn't.
well, speaking of, and I had asked you this before, but I do want to ask you, Commander, in your expert opinion, as someone who has studied military history, a graduate of the Naval War College, commander in U.S. Navy, in your opinion, is the detonation of the dam a war crime?
I think it probably meets the definition of war crime, but at the same time, as I tried to point out here, there is some thin excuse that it was a tactical decision to flood that zone to make that impossible for the Ukrainians to cross that section of the river. So it becomes a legal gray zone when, if I should say, it ever gets to court to decide whether it was a war crime or not. But in my opinion, yeah, I think it's a pretty deliberate war crime because of all the, deliberate intention of flooding people out, not allowing them to evacuate the area, preventing relief supplies from flowing into the area to help the affected. Yeah, that definitely qualifies as war crime.
So,
And also,
yes,
yep.
please.
Yeah, and also, people make a mistake when they say that this was, let's say, was not beneficial for Russians because they would never flood their own people. Technically, Ukrainians that live on the occupied territories, they remain Ukrainians, and this this whole invasion globally is it started because Russians wanted to remove Ukrainian identity from the face of the earth. That's why they would not care for that. 70 years ago, they did the same. They destroyed a dam in the same location, and I believe that they did that to eliminate several thousand German Nazis that were stationed there, and they did. Also, they eliminated around 100,000 Russian citizens. Sorry, Soviet citizens, not Russian citizens, Ukrainian citizens, but still Soviet citizens were killed because of that.
Yeah, there's a term that keeps popping into my head when I hear about all this, and it's a term that you may recall from the late 1930s, Lebensraum, which was the German argument that they were going to repopulate the East with Germans. Now, you haven't heard that from the Russian side, but I don't think they're interested necessarily in repopulating, although that's something I'm sure they would do. Their key concern is to just get people who are potential adversaries out. And an adversary to a Russian is anybody who isn't a Russian.
So we do have a number of super chats. I will get to those in just a minute. Thank you, as always. Any Starsky show, all super chats go to the Vatra Volunteer Organization, which helps troops on the front line, including Starsky's unit. So we appreciate that, and everything that we get goes straight to them. So thank you all for that. So this leaves, the dam leaves us with two obvious problems. The first is Crimea. The second is the 𝐍𝐢𝐜𝐴 nuclear power plant. Let's talk about Crimea for a second, because we were already on that. We believe they have roughly 30 days of water left. Was this also done? I mean, and it's hard to get into Putin's head, and I can see a whole number of factors in on this. We do, I think at this point, we've talked about it, I think the word genocide is appropriate. It appears to me crystal clear that it is an attempted genocide of the Ukrainian people. This includes, but is not limited to, the deporting of children, of Ukrainian citizens to remote regions in Russia where they have no communication with anyone, and in some cases even not repopulating the cities with their own people. They're just trying to eliminate the Ukrainian culture, way of life, and the Ukrainian people. If with this cut off of water to Crimea, is this an attempt at getting hostages? So they've, Crimea is starving and or losing water, and if Ukraine doesn't capitulate in some way, they won't supply it from the bridge. Is this just a further attempt to, hey, we're probably going to lose Crimea anyway, so let's just kill everybody there before we get out? Or was it just not even that well thought out in the beginning? And I'd like to start with Starsky on that one.
So I think that they didn't plan this again, because what they planned was obviously to make it harder for the Ukrainian advancing troops to cross the Dnieper River, if possible. They didn't plan to cut the water supply to Crimea at all. But again, this will benefit them big time, because they will be saying, look what Ukrainians did. Now you have no water, and this is how they basically can manipulate the local population in Crimea. That's my opinion.
It is a step worse even than the abusive husband who says, "Look what you made me do." It's unhinged, and the fact that it works, and I always especially on Twitter, which has turned into a cesspool. Commander, your thoughts?
I have to agree with Starsky. I don't think this was planned, at least not to the level that one would think it should have been planned if they were going to do this deliberately. Mm-hmm. I know that early on, when we knew the bridge was being wired for demolition and everything, there were all these concerns that, and as we talked about in our Wednesday when the bridge came down, we had that special session. A lot of the experts were predicting if the dam were destroyed, you get this giant 15-foot tall tidal wave sweeping down the river course. That didn't happen. And again, I think it's not because they were trying to be nice and have a gradual flood. I think it was just sheer ineptitude. I think an order came down from on high, from the Kremlin, blow the bridge. And so everybody rushed out and hit the detonators and it blew the bridge. But they hadn't checked everything, they hadn't verified everything, and you got this accidental oopsie detonation that caused massive flooding, but not a tidal wave. I think along those lines, it's like, did anybody think about the ramifications of, okay, once we do this, what's it going to do to the water supply in Crimea? Well, we know they've been stockpiling water in the cisterns and such. I mean, they were same cisterns that were used during the 1850s during the Crimean War. All of this is going on, but again, I don't think anybody thought about how many people are going to be affected and what the side effects are going to be. What happens if you do get the reactor to go supercritical, and then you get this giant plume of radioactive contamination? Which way do the winds blow? Well, they're going to blow them all over Rostov and Volgograd as they go downwind. That's about as stupid a thing as you can do. But again, an order came down from on high from a man who cannot be questioned, and you have this.
That was the same thing when they were entrenching in Chernobyl. They were told, okay, you can, as long as you're careful, you can hang out in Chernobyl and you can walk around. Don't disturb the dirt. Definitely don't dig, because what happens is everything settles. The radioactive material settles, and then you get a layer of dirt on top of that. And as long as you're walking on that layer of dirt on top of it, you're sort of shielded. But if you start digging into the earth, and so they said, no, don't do it. And they're like, yeah, we don't believe anything that scientists tell us. And that was.
Where do we hear that kind of thing in this country?
Oh, yeah. Here we go. Yeah. Well, you're not gonna get the argument from me. All right. So last question, and then the super chats. Thank you guys so much. I just wanted to make sure we got a couple of things out of the way before that. 𝐍𝐢𝐜𝐴𝐻𝐿. How concerned I always say this, Operator Starsky. I ask how concerned are people, and I realize, and we had this discussion when we had Anna on, and trying to maintain a normal life, and she's just like, look, there's so many things to be concerned about that we end up just sort of saying, no, we're just one foot in front of the other, and we're going to go to university, and we're going to try to get married, and we're going to try to have kids and raise a family in an absolute war zone. I can't even fathom it, but what's the alternative? So, but now we're talking the 𝐍𝐢𝐜𝐴𝐻𝐿 water plant. It's got a pool of water that was supplied directly from the dam. Without the dam now being down to a dead pool level, there's only about 30 days of cooling. We know that there is some combat now happening around that area. It looks like part of the Ukrainian counteroffensive may include trying to retake that plant. So how concerned are people about it? How concerned are you about it? And if you can discuss it, is there any thoughts about what could be done?
We are more concerned about Russians destroying the power plant, demolishing the power plant. Because after what happened in Kakhovka, in Kherson, we totally understand the reality that Russians can absolutely demolish the nuclear power plant. Also, we have footage made from CCTV cameras installed in the very power plant, showing that Russians brought a lot of artillery shells and a lot of explosives and installed them inside of the plant next to reactors. So we understand the reality that Russians will try to destroy the nuclear power plant. Again, I'd like people not to have any illusion about Russians. They will do that. They are terrorists. They will do that. Absolutely. So as soon as there is some sort of combat in the area, and they see some successful advance performed by the Ukrainian armed forces, they will destroy the nuclear power plant. I not like I can guarantee this, but myself, I'm pretty much sure that they will do that.
A year ago,
I'm sure.
I-
I'm sure from their perspective, it's a case of, why wait for the natural thing to happen? Let's rush it now.
Yeah. Also, again, remember several weeks ago we had information from the military intelligence of Ukraine that tried to raise awareness that Russians will try to make a false flag operation on the nuclear power plant. Our military intelligence had this information, and basically it didn't. The threat didn't disappear; it's still there. So again, they will try to blame Ukraine for whatever they do. As always, I don't know a single case when Russians actually admitted that they did something since shooting down MH17 over Ukraine.
Well,
Space
and
Aliens
so
did it.
they did. Hey,
Yes.
they got the Ukrainian shark. They got it. It's dead. So success.
A great victory for Russia.
Apologies. You were saying, Starsky. Oh, were you?
I will make
there
a
he is.
tattoo of Ukrainian shark. I have to.
I think you know what so we used to have, we don't have anymore. I've been thinking of bringing them back, sort of trinkets, little icons embedded in the interface in various places, hard to find for various momentous occasions. If we do that again, the first thing I want to bring back is a shark. I'm going to put in a little shark icon somewhere, and that will be our because I think that's worthy of it. Is that a reason to perhaps put retaking the power plant down on the priority list and say, let's not, before you answer that, I did want to say one other thing. About a year ago, a little more, I think, than a year ago, I had asked you, Starsky, we were talking about the dam, and I said, what, in your view, is the chance that they're going to blow that dam at some point? And you said 100%. 100%, I don't know when it, sooner or later, I don't know, but they will not leave without having detonated it. So having said that, so far, your call on what the Russians are willing to do strikes me as being extraordinarily accurate, and I tend to agree. Why leave a standing nuclear power plant when you can leave the world's largest dirty bomb? And so is that a reason to maybe put recapturing the plant down on the list so as to delay them doing that, or do you just fuck it and go for it?
Absolutely. I think that this possibility was already considered by our higher command. So, because it's a big threat, you cannot have the same level of combat around the nuclear power plant as you had, like in Bakhmut, for example. It's insane. So I think that this will be delayed, or the Russians will be brought to a position they have to consider withdrawing from the plant. But again, I don't guarantee, but myself, I'm sure that they will plant explosives and they will set it off.
Tanner?
Sadly true. No, I have to totally agree. Gallows humor, I was joking. From their perspective, it's like, why in the world wouldn't you? And in fact, why have they waited is more of the question at this point, I think. It fits right in with their modus operandi. I think it's almost an assured it's going to happen.
I think of the Joker from The Dark Knight. I am an agent of chaos. We see the Russians, and it's sort of like, as long as they're busy fucking something up somewhere, mission accomplished. And it does. And their view is just, we've got enough people that will be the last man standing, so we can just fuck everything up and rule over the ashes. Is kind of what I'm seeing. All right, so we had a couple questions I wanted to answer real quick. Yeah, this is we have Operator Starsky on every Friday to give us an update on Ukraine, for which we are very thankful. So All super chats go to the charity of his choice. He has chosen the Vatra Volunteer Organization. So thanks to the algorithm, not the algorithm, YouTube knocking everything back 30 days. It takes us a little longer than we'd like to get that out. But every super chat goes to that organization. So thank you all for that. So please like, subscribe, and you can keep up with Operator Starsky and the other news that we cover. So we have, let's see, 100. I think that's Swiss Prone, I want to say. I'm probably wrong. We'll start with the second half of that. Homer Simpson. Yeah, I love that one. No TV and no beer make Homer something. And Marge asks, go crazy? Don't mind if I do. So, Operator Starsky, please describe the Ukrainian beer scene. That's from Paulus Payne. I don't, above me.
The Ukrainian beer scene?
That's what it says. Operator Starsky, please describe the Ukrainian beer scene. Smiley face, and then it has the Homer Simpson gag.
What does it mean?
I was asking you.
I don't. Just asking what are local Ukrainian beers like? What are your favorites?
Okay.
So we have a very nice beer. I remember when I was in the US, I had to buy stuff like Carlsberg or Bavarian. Not like I dislike American beer, but I consider that one better. Okay. With all my respect.
If he ever makes it to Massachusetts, I am going to treat him to. We will go to the Sam Adams Brewery. And you can see real American beer for what it's worth. It's okay. It's not going to compete with some of the German stuff, but it's still. You know what? I challenge you, sir. I don't know to what, but I challenge you. Anyways, please continue.
Okay, you're driving, and one thing I really like about the U.S. is like all this barbecue culture. Our barbecue culture sucks comparing to this because it's underdeveloped. So yeah, that's something that I enjoyed while staying in the US. As for the beer, I'm not a big fan of beer, but there comes a time when I accidentally order a beer after like 1-2 years not drinking anything at all, and the same thing happened in Chernihiv, by the way, when I visited Bogdan, my buddy, before he got captured, and we decided to meet in the bar, and while I was waiting for him, I decided to order myself a beer, something like Stella Artois or something like that. Because I remember that it was something that I drank once in my life, and I was sitting there drinking Stella, and I was like, tastes good. Why the hell did I avoid this at all? And I got I don't remember how this evening finished at all. Later, I saw some strange pictures on my phone. Kid crying in tears, and me and Bogdan, because we were sergeants, we were laughing there on a picture, and I was like, "What the hell is this?" So yeah, there comes it that I should try. Like, why not? And then it results in something unpredictable. So I accept the challenge, Nick. Absolutely.
All right, I'm looking forward to it. Before my father married my stepmother, he took her. They went on a trip to Europe, and they were in France. And my father wanted to impress her with his knowledge of French, so he was ordering off the menu in French. He ordered his own meal and wanted to get her a nice French wine, and apparently instead ordered a fine French hooker for her, and made it clear it was for her. And the maitre d' apparently was more than willing to help out, but did in fact want to just double check that the order was correct. he said, but the guy didn't bat an eyelash. He's like, "Are you sure? I mean, we could arrange it, but anyways." So obviously, I should probably spend more time in French restaurants, but at any rate, or less, depending on who you're talking to. So having said all that, and before I dig the hole any deeper, let's see, 200. Let's see, what is that? That's 200 DKK Danish krone. That was just I think a sticker. So thank you so much for that. $5 from Killer Rabbit of Cabernon. Starsky, can you tell me the facts about the armored column attack? That's a very I'm surprised we didn't get to that. Apparently, one Leopard 2 destroyed, but Russian bots are claiming more. So the Russians are claiming that they destroyed an entire, and the list was, I think they destroyed I couldn't tell if it was, this is when you can't tell the difference between a parody Russian account and a real one. It was like, oh, well, we destroyed 100 Abrams and all this other stuff. I was like, where are they getting these numbers from?
Well, the most recent video that I saw published by Russian official TV channels and their Telegram channels was destroying several vehicles that
combine harvesters.
Yeah. As for the armored column, we will hear things like that. Okay. I currently cannot confirm or disconfirm this because I need more details. I only learned about it today. Wasn't following news much, unfortunately, but we will hear a lot of things like that. Several Abrams, several Leopard. Oh my God, Abrams, Leopard tanks were already drowned. Or scuttled in the swamp, as we know. We already saw pictures of those tanks with Russian flags installed on them, and before they even emerged in Ukraine. We know that several were destroyed by Russian conscripts armed with shovels. They were raped, they were peed on, they were eaten, and things like that. Despicable things were made to those poor tanks.
I understand leopard tanks are very tasty if cooked properly.
Yeah, absolutely, and eaten with Russian shi. So we will be hearing things like that, guys. There is information that one company where my friends were, it got attacked. My friends are alive, luckily. They had casualties there, and this footage was published today a lot. But as for Leopard tanks, I believe that Russians will claim that they have destroyed all Leopard tanks in our galaxy in that column, and Ukraine has absolutely nothing to fight with, and that's it. Ukraine already considers giving up. That's the level of propaganda the Russians always have. So we gotta get.
The flip side of this is that people have this absurd picture of what the Leopard or the Abrams or the Challenger brings to the fight. It's like it's some transformer super mech that can win the war all by itself. It's not. It's just a tank. It's a slightly better tank than the ones that are currently being used. So, yeah, we're going to see destroyed Leopards and Challengers and Abrams. It's unavoidable. It will happen. It doesn't mean the war is over. It doesn't mean the Ukrainian offensive has been destroyed in its tracks. It just means you're taking casualties, as you're going to do in any offensive operation.
It's like with the Bakhmut. I mean, they took Bakhmut, which became the first town bigger than a village, that Russians managed to take in 2023. And basically, the fight for Bakhmut lasted for more than 300 days. Something like 350 days, almost a year. And they took control over Bakhmut temporarily, and because we know that they already lost control over the western part of Bakhmut, which was confirmed by Prigozhin, by the way, himself. And this was the most amazing victory you can imagine, because taking Bakhmut apparently opens a road towards Germany, the US, Alabama, and
I can neither confirm nor deny the presence of Russian tanks driving down Pennsylvania Avenue at this moment.
Georgia.
There you go.
Yeah. So that's just the level of propaganda. Yes, they will show strikers. They will show bushmasters. They will not show things like HIMARS, of course, because last year they claimed they destroyed 27 of them, while Ukraine barely had 20. And but as for those tanks, yes, we will see them destroyed. We will see some vehicles destroyed, and Russians will celebrate this as a huge victory over the Western capitalism. And you will see that they will be showing that on all the news channels, like the biggest achievement of the Russian army, which apparently will be true, probably.
Well, it's George Orwell, right? Ukraine is going to lose the war tomorrow. Ukraine has always been going to lose the war tomorrow. Oh, dear Lord. All right, so $27.99 from level 70, $27.99 Canadian. When Kakhovka Dam reservoir drops, the level drops, which I believe it's at Deadpool now. I could be wrong. Will this provide new offense? It is? All right, perfect. Will this provide new offensive opportunities to the Ukrainian army to liberate less protected and occupied territories across the reservoir, which were not possible before? Now, this is actually, I've been wondering about this myself. I mean, I don't know how long it takes for the water to recede. Once it recedes, I don't know how long before you can run a tank over it. And I think that's roughly the gist of this question, which is, now that, I mean, the Dnipro River is going to be, significantly diminished, does that open up new offensive possibilities once the waters recede?
What do you think the bottom of a reservoir looks like?
Well, I'm assuming south of the dam. But I assume it's mud, and I assume it's mud like 10 miles down.
Yeah, so nothing's going to be crossing the reservoir. Plus, it's got a river still running through the middle of it somewhere once it finds its proper course. The stuff downstream, once that dries out, in theory, but you still have the river flowing through it, it's a major river. And that's one of the reasons the dam was this attractive target, was because it was one of the most likely crossing points for getting some significant forces over. Particularly, once you did some repairs to it, you could get, tanks and heavy armored personnel carriers and such. And so I don't see that it's opening up a new avenue of advance. If anything, it's just the opposite. The flooding has created this huge impenetrable swath that's likely to be uncrossable for months.
Well, and all the dam did, right, was just hold a whole bunch of water there. And the river, when you first make a dam, the river gets smaller because you're collecting all the water. But once you've collected the water, you're essentially letting as much out on the bottom of the dam as comes in through the top. You've just collected it, so the river is not going to be any smaller. I think this is a very important question, and I think it's I don't like the answer, but I'd like to start with Starsky on this one. But $6.99, also level 7. Level 70, you've been a major contributor for a while, so we really appreciate all of these super chats. Thank you so much for this. If NATO sees that Russia is going to blow up the nuclear power plant, will they intervene? And for both of you, but let's start with Starsky.
I doubt that.
Well, and in fact, we're pretty sure.
Sadly, I agree. I don't see it. I think if they were smart, they would, because we all know what the effect is going to be if they do it. But yeah, NATO is very, very leery of triggering escalation.
And of course, we will not see any reaction from like the UN. They will go like, you don't shoot at reactors. They are not a target. And Russians will click like in their Twitter and say, yeah, sure.
Well, to be fair with the Russians, my assumption is that they're trying to hit the broadside of a barn and hit the reactor instead. So NATO, okay. We have intelligence that they've rigged explosives throughout the reactor, or sorry, throughout the plant. We don't know exactly where, so you can't sit there and say that they've actually rigged it on the reactor to. But okay, so we know it's there. You have mentioned before, Commander, that NATO has drawn a hard line in the sand, and let's talk about what we know and what we don't know, but have theorized about this. We know that through back channels, NATO has told Putin if you use nuclear weapons in the field, this would be tactical nuclear weapons, NATO will engage. They will involve themselves in some way or another. We are extraordinarily confident that he also mentioned chemical weapons, so they said nuclear or chemical, but the only thing that's been confirmed by independent news sources so far has been that it was nuclear. This would ostensibly be creating the world's largest nuclear dirty bomb and detonating it in Ukraine. Do you think it counts?
Yeah.
Do you think it should count as having violated that? Just as a theory, what do you think would happen if they do that?
Again, I don't think NATO will do anything if the Russians cause a catastrophe at the reactor. I think they should, but I don't think they will. I don't think the political will has built up to a point of saying, okay, enough is enough. Let's just end this damn thing now. Instead, there will be a lot of hand-wringing. They will send in disaster relief stuff to help the Ukrainians in the area. Of course, the world stage will all be, oh, you're helping the Ukrainians, but look at all the poor Russians dying. And so that's where the UN will likely focus its efforts. Should NATO do something? I think they should. I think they should, again, back channel, tell them point blank. You guys caused that reactor to go supercritical and flood the area with radiation. It's the same as you setting off a tactical nuke. And we will take the appropriate action to make sure that you'll regret it. But I don't see that happening, unfortunately.
Operator Starsky?
Yeah, I agree on that. There will be so the response that I anticipate from the NATO will be sending Ukrainians a lot of like protection suits and protection gear and things like that.
Oranges, lots of oranges.
Oranges, red wine, maybe, why not? And it sounds very, very pessimistic, of course.
Yeah.
But it's realistic. And at the same time, we will, if this happens, we will see, again, a lot of people from around the world that will try to help Ukrainians. Probably we will see a lot of specialists from places like Japan that will arrive to Ukraine to try to help somehow. And from other countries, the US, I'm sure, will also help. I mean, like people, not officials. I'm talking about people. Officially, I don't see that happening. Any sort of, intervention, nothing like that.
Has there been any sort of international help for the refugees from the flooding in Ukraine?
I've heard about initiatives like that. I've heard that several countries I gotta check this information though, but I've heard that several countries offered refuge for such people. Again, whole Ukraine at this point is helping those people who had to be relocated from those areas. They gather food, clothes, and other things like power banks, phones, everything, because people lost a lot of things there. Basically, they lost houses full of stuff. So that's one thing. The international reaction, we know it. Those people that support Ukraine, not all of them. They already said that it's a huge crime. Other people said, well, we don't really know who did this, like maybe Martians, zombies, reptiloids, sharks.
Sharks.
Could be, Megalodon is very big.
Yeah.
And but I've heard about such initiatives.
When we had
sorry, I cannot tell you more about it because I'm a military.
well, and I tried, and I tried. Yeah, please, Commander.
I was going to say, I think part of the problem is there's already a lot of international relief going on in Ukraine right now for all the other stuff, and this is such a sudden shift in terms of what kind of help is needed, and it's in large part many of the same organizations that will be doing it. So I'm sure it's going to take time for that humanitarian NGO thing to spin up to be able to refocus the efforts on dealing with flood victims as opposed to dealing with people who've been bombed out of their homes, displaced by war, etc. I mean, to those of us on the outside, it looks very different. It looks like, well, it's all the same as people in need, but it's not. They're in need of different things in different quantities in different areas. So it becomes a logistic nightmare for an organization that's probably thinly staffed and not particularly well equipped to suddenly shift lanes that way.
Yeah, one thing that can be helpful, basically, during the blackouts that we had in winter, we were sent a lot of clothes for the people, and I know that some of those clothes are still there, and those are being used to for the relief purpose. So people receive the clothes that we had since winter that wasn't distributed yet.
Yeah, I think shelter is probably going to be a big issue.
Yeah, because you have to accommodate a lot of people, thousands of them.
Yeah.
Well, that's to the commander's point. So during the winter clothing, when people had homes, they could stay in their homes, but they still needed clothing. Now it's not winter anymore. The clothing is less important, but shelter is suddenly much more important given the particular nature of this catastrophe. All right. So, and then let's see, $5 killer rabbit of Carbonong. Did you take Fluffy to the vet yesterday? Carabanong, thank you. Because of sneezing.
You're still mispronouncing it.
I'm still mispronouncing. Okay, one more time.
Okay, Carabanong.
Carabanong.
It's from Monty Python and the Holy Grail.
Yeah, it's been so long, and I don't think I even saw it fully. I shouldn't finish that sentence because there are friends that will disown me if I finish that sentence. Carabanong.
Yes, I'm beginning to doubt you now if you haven't seen that.
Exactly. I didn't say that. I came close to saying that.
I may find other things to do on Friday afternoons.
Did you take Fluffy to the vet yesterday because of sneezing? Did you get her vaccinated? Could you describe for our audience, because I don't think you've actually ever told our audience, anyone who follows you knows, and I know you've mentioned it on other channels, who is Fluffy? And just tell us a little bit of her backstory, and this super chat I was asking if she's been to the vet yet.
Fluffy is my new kid, which I didn't plan. So I found Fluffy on a parking lot. Basically, she could die there because, I found her crawling across very, very hot asphalt. And it was a very, very hot day, and there were a lot of cars. And she could be either killed by a car, crowds, or whatever. So when I saw her, and I literally stumbled upon her, I decided that we gotta start a rescue operation. We have to evacuate this passenger to a vet somewhere. And this is how I got a little cat, little kitten. So she started sneezing several days ago, like 3 days ago. If your cat continues sneezing for several days, it's a good indication that you gotta take your kitten or cat to the vet, because your cat may have some sort of virus or infection. But on the second day, she was fine. So probably it was, I don't know, maybe she got something stuck in her nose, because currently Fluffy enjoys collecting dust all over my place. That's why no matter how hard I try to, wash her face, because she still has some of mucus, around her eyes that went dry, and I cannot remove it no matter how hard I try. I have to shave her in order to remove it. Seriously, it's like rock solid. The vet said that it will go away eventually. And when I start washing her face, like that tiny face, she's shredding me to pieces, because her claws are very, very sharp. And I bought the clipper, but I cannot use it because she scratches me and runs away. And she collects all kinds of dust, those dust rabbits from underneath my bed, and other places that I didn't even know exist in my apartment. That's why she gets a bit dirtier. So probably she got some dust stuck in her nose or something like that. But currently she is absolutely fine. She stopped sneezing. Instead, she learned how to scream, and now when she sees me, she starts yelling at me like an angry elephant. And I didn't know. She basically she screams like a little toddler. Exactly. I didn't know they can do that. And from what I know, by the way, when cats yell at people, this is not natural. I mean, it was something that it was a product of evolution, actually. Cats learned that, and people are the only
creatures
living beings. Yeah, the only creatures that cats can yell to like that.
Well, and I've seen you on stream with her, and she's just like, you're a jungle gym, and she's just like up the shoulder, up the other side, tries to get up on your head, and then just like, oh, I'm on camera, turns around and just sticks her ass right out onto the camera. I was like, yep, she's made for streaming. All right, so we got one more super chat. Thank you very much for that. I'll get to that in a minute. But before I do, and this is the kind of question that, I usually lean on Commander Macmillan a bit more for, because I'm aware that Starsky is going to be more limited in what he can say. But it is for both of you. Well, yeah, it's really probably just for Commander McMillan. We're going to have Starsky back next week, same time, 3:30 Eastern Standard. So, Commander, what are you looking for as indicators as to A, whether or not the bursting of the dam had a significant impact on the offensive or the counteroffensive, and B, for indicators of success or measures of success over the next week that you would be expecting as you're going to be watching what's unfolding in Ukraine?
Sure. So I'll answer the second question first. I think the indicator that the operation is going successfully is if you actually see a breakthrough of the lines and you start to see expansion of Ukrainian forces into that breach. And then they will start fanning out into the rear areas. It will open the breach wider, making it easier to bring more forces through. And you'll, assuming everything's going well, see a drive straight through to the coast. The danger, the risk with any kind of operation like that is for the enemy to attack the flanks of that salient and cut the spearhead off. And I'm sure the Ukrainians are well aware of that and have, plenty of forces waiting to cover those flanks and to continue to open that breach to make it harder and harder to cut that penetration off. So that's what I would be looking for in the next week or so, is to see some sort of penetration of the lines. You were going to say?
Well, and I was going to ask, but I realized that there was also the first question, but I was also going to fold into that. You had also given an estimate as to whether this would be more or less or as successful as the last counteroffensive, and so I was hoping you could regale us with that again.
Sure. I think if this goes the way I anticipate it will, I think it will be at least as successful, if not more so, than the one we saw in the late summer, early autumn last year. I don't think it will actually penetrate into Crimea, but I suspect that all of, I believe it's Kherson Oblast that leads up to the top of Crimea may well end up being cleared. So that's a possibility if it goes well. The other side of that offensive action that we haven't really addressed is what's going on around Bakhmut. We could well be getting all this wrong. It could be the other way around. The primary offensive could be there, and what we're seeing coming south out of Zaporizhia is a feint, so to speak, or a secondary effort, and that may be the one that liberates major portions of Donetsk and Luhansk or something. We don't know yet. That hasn't revealed itself. But yeah, I think sometime within the next week we should see something dramatic occur. Now, I don't want to get everybody's hopes up. It's war. Nothing is certain. This could go the other way. The Russians could somehow manage to magically throw back the offensive, and we'd be right back in stabilized lines, trench lines. So that's always a possibility. Personally, I don't see that happening given the relative balance of forces and the levels of morale and logistics that we're seeing. The second part of the question was about, have we seen any effect about the flooding impacting the operations? I don't know for certain. I suspect that there was perhaps a secondary effort that once the main penetration, if it's going to be from Zaporizhia, that there would have been another secondary effort to try to rush for and secure the top of the Crimean Peninsula may have developed in that line. I think that probably is no longer a viable option. Those forces may be relocated to help support the main offensive effort. Alternately, those troops may be involved in just helping facilitate disaster relief. And if our predictions about the nuclear plant are true, they may well end up getting caught up in dealing with that.
All right. Thank you. Operator Starsky, any thoughts on this or any sort of final thoughts as we wrap up?
Yeah, so I would like to again remind people that when all this starts, when you will realize that it already started, you will most probably see some of the vehicles that were provided to us destroyed, like Leopards, like some Strikers, other vehicles, Bradleys. You will see them on fire. You will see them in Russian Telegram channels. And you will see this global, absolutely hilarious celebration among Russians because, yes, we lost Moscow flagship, but who cares about the Moscow flagship? We destroyed a Leopard tank.
We sank a rowboat and it was Ukrainians.
Yes.
Yeah, and it's like with Kherson, basically. We lost some major city in Ukraine. Who cares about major city in Ukraine? We took control over the 56th biggest city in Ukraine, the Bakhmut. You know, so you will see things like that. Please don't just get dragged away with this Russian with those Russian narratives, okay? Because there will be a lot of shit like that. When things started, let's say, changing to what we see today in Bakhmut, we were talking about it last year, basically, in winter. We were talking about Bakhmut. We were saying that, guys, you will see some successful Russian attacks, some unsuccessful Russian attacks. You will see that because Bakhmut is turning into a Russian cemetery for months. And that's exactly what we saw. Russians lost like almost 100,000 men in Bakhmut trying to take this place. Same will be with the counteroffensive. Just be very, very careful with Russian narratives because they will try to convince you that it's over. It's over for Ukraine. Basically, this is why Russians started this. Started talking about the Ukrainian counteroffensive that already began like several months ago, okay, because they want to show you that yes, Ukrainians are losing every day, their counteroffensive sucks, you know, nothing happens for real, and this changes a lot in your heads on a daily basis. When the counteroffensive starts, you will see that. You will see Russians running. That will be a good indication that it started.
Well, and I like the commander's point that he had made earlier that I wanted to reiterate it. Please, hopefully I'm getting you accurately, sir, which is that, we saw the last major counteroffensive from Ukraine was staggering in its success, and Russians were they were just collapsing. You had routing left and right, and everything was, and it basically stopped fundamentally when A, the logistics had to catch up, and B, the ground was freezing over, and it was really, you couldn't continue major combat operations. But since then, Russia has not really been training its troops. They haven't been supplying its troops, and the new troops coming in have been, we were at bottom of the barrel. Now they've taken the barrel, flipped it over, and are scraping the wood off the base upside down. I mean, it's just out of, people out of prisons, mental hospital, wherever they can get them. These are not the quality, quote, of people that were there last time. Russian forces are worse off than they've ever been, and the Ukrainians are now much better armed than they've ever been, and trained, and been preparing for it. So the expectation, I think, that you had said, sir, was that's essentially why you think they're going to do better?
Yep. Among other things, that's true. I'd like to read a quick quote from a newspaper article I came across. I think it was Washington Post. I'm not positive. They were interviewing General Petraeus, and I'm sure people are familiar with that name. Anyway, he said, General Dwight Eisenhower told troops who would be landing in Europe on D-Day that they were about to begin the liberation of Europe. Quote, "The hopes and prayers of liberty-loving people everywhere march with you." Today, the hopes and prayers of liberty-loving people everywhere will march with Ukrainian troops. We can only hope their counteroffensive will be as successful.
There are a lot of reasons, and we've just discussed it before, and I don't think we should dwell on it too often or for too long, why I think it's important enough that we cover this every week, and we're very thankful to have Starsky here every week to do that. It's a war. It's an innocent country that has been invaded by a much larger country. There are war crimes, and it's, any number of very good reasons why people should be made aware of this and should have their hand on the pulse of what's going on over there. I think it's part of being a citizen of the world. But as much as that, I don't think it's a overstatement to say that Ukraine is right now a proxy for the rest of Western civilization, because if Russia succeeds in overrunning Ukraine, they are not going to stop there. And how many countries have they invaded in the last 10 years? Most Americans aren't aware. I wasn't aware of how many they had invaded until we started looking at this. I was like, wow, they've been busy. And this is just really the first one where people have started to really notice and take care, and thank God they did. So it's the Ukrainian people who have been the definition of grace under pressure, and who have been defending themselves with dignity and grace in the face of some of the most brutal warfare, literally medieval tactics that we've ever seen. It's been I wish we didn't have to, but if this was going to happen, it's been a privilege that we've been able to cover it to the degree we have. So thank you very much, Operator Starsky, for that, and we wish you and all the Ukrainians the absolute best. Slava Ukraine. So with that, thank you, sir. Thank you all for joining us. We saved one last super chat. 200 Swedish. NOK. Yeah, I think that's Swedish. One of these days.
What is it? Tell me the letters.
NOK. That's Swedish. NOK.
NOK. No, Norwegian kroner.
No, Norwegian kroner. Thank you. From Paulus Plain, Operator Starsky, please have hope, love, and faith. With love from a Norwegian citizen with half Norwegian and half British blood in Norway. I love you all, man. Slava Ukraini. Thank you all. Glory to Ukraine and to Ukrainian beer. And with that, thank you all for joining us. And Operator Starsky, do me a very big favor, if you will, please, and while defending your country and defending what's right, stay as safe as you possibly can. And we look forward to seeing you next week.